The neon lights of Hong Kong's underground fighting circuit cast eerie shadows across the makeshift arena. Tonight, two legends of martial arts cinema would step out of their silver screen worlds and into a realm where only raw skill, determination, and years of disciplined training would determine the victor. The crowd's anticipation was palpable. A clash between two titans who had defined different eras of action cinema was about to unfold. The departure from familiar territory. Both warriors found themselves far from their comfort zones. Yukari Oshima, the Japanese sensation who had conquered Hong Kong's action scene in the 1980s and 90s, was no longer surrounded by the elaborate film sets and choreographed sequences that had made her famous. Gone were the safety nets of multiple takes and stunt coordinators. Angela Mao, the Taiwanese powerhouse who had blazed trails in the 1970s alongside Bruce Lee, stepped away from the structured world of traditional martial arts demonstrations and film productions that had shaped her career. The underground arena represented uncharted territory for both fighters, a place where their cinematic reputations meant nothing, and only their true martial prowess would speak. The Japanese hurricane, Yukari Oshima's arsenal. Oshima moved with the fluid grace of a seasoned predator. Her background in karate and gymnastics had created a unique fighting style that Hollywood stunt coordinators had spent decades trying to replicate. What made her truly dangerous wasn't just her technical skill, but her adaptability. Throughout her film career, she had mastered the art of improvisation, turning everyday objects into weapons and using her environment to her advantage. Her greatest strength lay in her explosive speed and unpredictability. Oshima could shift from defensive to offensive in milliseconds, launching combinations that seemed to come from nowhere. Her gymnastics background gave her an almost supernatural ability to contort her body, avoiding strikes that would have landed on any other fighter, while simultaneously positioning herself for devastating counterattacks. But the arena would test her in ways that film sets never could. Oshima's conditioning, while impressive, had been tailored for short, intense sequences with breaks between takes. Could her stamina hold up in a prolonged battle? Her style, perfected for visual impact on camera, relied heavily on acrobatic maneuvers that consumed enormous amounts of energy. Every spectacular flip and spinning kick came at a cost. Across the arena, Angela Mao represented the old school of martial arts mastery. Her foundation in Hapkido was rock solid, built on years of traditional training that emphasized efficiency over flash. Where Oshima dazzled with complexity, Mao devastated with simplicity. Her techniques were economical, precise, and brutally effective. Mao's greatest asset was her mental fortitude. She had trained in an era when martial arts were about discipline, respect, and the cultivation of inner strength. Her movements carried the weight of tradition. Each strike was thrown with the accumulated wisdom of generations of martial artists. Her defensive skills were legendary. She could read an opponent's intentions before they even formed in their mind. Her experience in close-quarters combat gave her a significant advantage. While Oshima excelled at dynamic, long-range techniques, Mao was deadliest when the distance closed. Her grappling skills and joint manipulation techniques could end a fight in seconds if she managed to get her hands on an opponent. However, time was not entirely on her side. The years had inevitably taken their toll on her reflexes. While her technique remained flawless, her body might not respond with the lightning speed that had once made her untouchable. Could veteran wisdom overcome youthful explosiveness? As both fighters entered the arena, the contrast was striking. Oshima bounced on her feet, her eyes scanning for angles and opportunities, already visualizing the acrobatic combinations she would unleash. Her energy was kinetic, restless, like a coiled spring ready to explode into motion. Mao stood centered and still, her breathing deep and controlled. She had already begun the mental preparation that had served her throughout her career, emptying her mind of distractions and focusing entirely on the present moment. Her stillness was not passive, but loaded with potential energy. The first exchange would set the tone for everything that followed. Oshima opened with a series of feints, testing Mao's reactions and looking for patterns she could exploit. Her footwork was dazzling, creating angles that shouldn't have existed. But Mao didn't bite on the feints. Instead, she tracked Oshima's center of gravity, waiting for the moment when Flash would give way to commitment. When Oshima finally committed to her attack, a spectacular jumping kick that had finished countless opponents in her films, Mao was ready. She stepped offline at the last possible second, her hands capturing Oshima's extended leg and using the Japanese fighter's own momentum against her. The crowd gasped as Oshima found herself off balance, vulnerable to Mao's counterattack. But this was where Oshima's greatest strength revealed itself. Instead of fighting the throw, she used her gymnastics training to turn the disadvantageous position into an opportunity, rolling with the momentum and creating distance. What should have been a fight-ending moment became merely the opening movement of a much longer symphony of combat. The battle raged on, each fighter probing for weaknesses while concealing their own vulnerabilities. Oshima's speed created problems that Mao had never encountered, forcing the veteran to adapt her traditional responses to deal with attacks coming from impossible angles. Meanwhile, Mao's counterattacks carried a weight and precision that reminded Oshima that in the world of real combat, not every hit could be shrugged off like in the movies. As the fight entered its crucial phase, both warriors began to show the strain. Oshima's spectacular techniques had taken their toll on her stamina, and her movements, while still impressive, had lost some of their earlier snap. Mao, despite her superb conditioning, was feeling the accumulated impact of Oshima's strikes. Her defense remained solid, but her opportunities to counterattack were becoming fewer and farther between. The decisive moment came when Oshima, perhaps recognizing that time was working against her, committed fully to a combination that had never failed her before. It was beautiful to watch, a series of strikes that flowed like water, each technique setting up the next in perfect harmony. But Mao had been studying her opponent throughout the fight, and she recognized the pattern. In the space between heartbeats, Mao made her choice. Instead of defending against the combination, she stepped forward into it, accepting a lesser strike to create an opening for a greater one. Her training in pressure point techniques and traditional martial arts philosophy paid dividends as she found the one moment of vulnerability in Oshima's otherwise flawless sequence. Mao's counterattack was everything her decades of training had prepared her for. Economical, precise, and absolutely devastating. There was no wasted motion, no excess energy expended on visual flourishes. Her strike found its target with surgical precision, targeting a pressure point that would end the fight without causing permanent damage. Oshima, caught in the middle of her own combination, had no defense against the attack. Her body, already pushed to its limits by the prolonged battle, could not respond quickly enough to counter or escape. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the Japanese fighter's knees buckled and she sank to the arena floor. Angela Mao stood victorious, immediately helping Oshima to her feet with warrior's respect. The battle was decided by fundamental principles: patience, precision, and wisdom. Mao's classical training and mental discipline overcame Oshima's spectacular modern style. The arena witnessed two philosophies clash: traditional versus innovative, substance versus spectacle. Ultimately, Mao proved old ways remain supremely effective.